I mean, I think when you talk about, Ronaldo, Zidane, players like that, that goal that Zidane scored in the Champions League final at Hampden Park, I simply couldn't have scored. A ball dropping vertically is one of the hardest skills to then connect, like he did, on your weak foot. I could strike the ball with my weak foot, but that was just unbelievable what he did. So things like that, I think, wow. I mean, I wouldn't even attempt it. I'd probably take a touch and lay it off, or take a touch and try to shoot, or whatever it might be. So there are certain things, that happen in a game that you just think, that's just not my game. I couldn't have done it. Ronaldo was another one, as you say. I mean, his pace, his skill while he was running at pace, how he used to go round the goalkeeper. It was never a forte of mine, going round the goalkeeper. I didn't really like the finish. It didn't just come natural to me. So that was probably one thing that he did that I couldn't do. No, I think Real Madrid is, at the time, there was, it was the Galactico era, wasn't it? So I think at the time, they were individual players there that were probably the best collection of players in the world at that time. Possibly the greatest ever collection of players in one time. I don't know. When you think, Zidane, Figo, Beckham, Ronaldo, Raul, Roberto Carlos, the list goes on. It was an incredible pool of talent. So I think, there was definitely an elevation in the quality of individual players. That's not to say that the team couldn't be as effective. And that went to be proven, actually, because that team of great individuals probably didn't have the collective success that many would expect. But going there, obviously, I just won a Ballon d'Or very recently. Going there, I felt very much part of, I should be in this team. I was one of the best players around at the time, so I felt quite, normal going into the dressing room. But what is one thing that you always do when you go into a dressing room is you want to impress. I know lots of people will go to a club and think, I've got to impress the fans, got to impress the manager. But for me, it was all about, you got to impress the players. I wanted to make a big impression that they would think, this kid can play. He's one of us, type of thing. We can give him the ball in tight situations, and etc. etc. So I did feel particularly strong about that, but I didn't feel in awe of anything or things like that. I felt as though I was good enough to be there. Well, I think we've probably just named one in Ronaldo. Barring injury, we might be talking about him as the greatest player ever to have set foot on a football pitch. He was simply incredible. When I was growing up and I was watching him, I was thinking, wow, I thought I was one of the best around in my age group, etc. And I thought, I'm going to have a big career. I could be one of the better players, let's say, in world football. And then I watched him and I thought, oh no, if that's the level, I've got no chance. He was just phenomenal. And to play with him, okay, it was at the end of his career when he wasn't at the peak of his powers, but he was still, a joy to play with, just raw pace and strength and skill, and a combination of those two. He just doesn't come along very often. So he was definitely there. I'd have to say Alan Shearer, playing alongside Alan for England and for Newcastle. I mean, his goal scoring record in the Premier League probably says it all. He was probably one of the most mentally strong players around. Obviously wouldn't have the skill and the pace of someone like Ronaldo, but could probably get equally as good records because he just had, an amazing mentality. So I think Alan Shearer was one. And then I'd say Wayne Rooney. I mean, look at his career. Look how good a player he was. He won virtually everything. He scored hundreds of goals. And he was just a total natural player with, again, a great mentality for the game, rarely injured, tough and mentally strong, and a great lad as well. So I'd say those three. Not a specific moment, no. I mean, listen, I was managed by lots and lots of great managers over the years, but his record will stand the test of time, won't it? It'll be one of the greatest managers of all time. No, I mean, just looking from the outside, 26 years, was it, as Manchester United manager? And in that time, football has changed unbelievably. The way football clubs are run, the amount of staff now, I mean, the things you've got to manage in today's game are just totally different to what they were 26 years ago. Or longer, actually, in his case. But I think being able to manage over that period of time and adapt with the change and adapt with the times, I think it's just unbelievable how he did that over such a long period of time. And, his knowledge about football, he rarely coached. I mean, he never got onto the train while I was there in 3 years. He rarely got onto the training ground and coached any of the players, but he managed. And that's what it says on the tin. The first team coaches, that's what they're there to do, to coach the first team. And he manages everything. He looks over everything. And then on Saturday, he takes over and you absolutely know who the manager is at that point. No, I was just impressed as a whole. And if I were to go into management, which I've not got any plans to do, but I would certainly take a lot of what I saw him do into the role. Not really. No. No. Well, no is the honest answer. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I think things like that are what fans do. In terms of when you're a professional, that it's part and parcel of the game. Sort of moving clubs and moving here and there and everything else. So, and it's almost unspeakable for a fan to ever contemplate, supporting another team, but in the game with managers, with players, that's just what happens. And that's why fans will always get annoyed and point fingers and say that players have got no loyalty and all the rest of it. But players would be exactly the same as fans if they weren't good at kicking the ball around. They'd only have one team and they'd support them through thick and thin and everything else. So going into a dressing room, coming from a club, I'd been to Real Madrid, I'd then gone to Newcastle, then came to Manchester United. So it's not like I left Liverpool and went to the arch rivals straight away. I mean, and everybody knows that I was desperate to go back to Liverpool at every opportunity. But when you've got a career, you have to look after it and try to play at the highest level for as long as you can, etc. And I think fellow players just understand that. And all the players that don't, I mean, it makes me chuckle. Because all the players that say, oh no, I'd never play for this team, I'd never play for that, they're talking through their arse. I mean, absolutely through their arse. Because, okay, you wouldn't if you had the choice. But if you haven't got the choice, in a lot of cases, or it was the difference between playing, in a relegation team or playing in a Champions League team, or whatever the reason, then people would. And I could give a million examples and literally blow people's image apart from to do the same thing of everyone that thinks that this player and that player are such great clubmen, only play for one. Well, I can tell you that if things went wrong and they got dropped from the team or anything else like that, then you'd be amazed to know, put it that way. So I take a lot of stick because it just fell that way, that my career fell that way and I couldn't get back to Liverpool after I went to Real Madrid and things like that. But I know that I'm no different to the next man on the street. And as I say, things like that don't really get spoken about in dressing room. It's more of a fans sort of, they get on their high horse. I think the first time I needed to adapt my game was probably at Newcastle. When I first joined Newcastle, I still felt as if I was sort of, the Michael Owen that I always wanted to be and all I always was as a kid. And, I played a natural game, just an instinctive game. And if I thought I had to run in behind, I'd run in behind. But I think I was like that for the first 6 months at Newcastle until I broke my foot away at Tottenham. And then subsequently did my knee playing for England, and sort of there was a year and a half period really that I was out of action. And I think coming back from that, as much as I was very, very fit and strong coming back, and my knee was in as good a shape as ever, and I had the most incredible rehab, I think just sort of from that moment onwards, I started losing a little bit of my pace, and then it was a case sort of a gradual process of having to change my name. And in fact, once Kevin Keegan came in to manage, he put me in sort of a number 10 role and put Viduka and Martins up front, and I sort of played at the point of a diamond in midfield, in behind. And I think Kevin Keegan sort of saw that and actually spoke to me about dropping into midfield later on in my career at Newcastle. Yeah, I think it was at that point, probably Kevin Keegan saw it, I felt it, that I could still offer, different things in a different way, but that greyhound pace in behind centre halves was possibly becoming a thing of the past. Yeah, it was different, and that was one of the attractions, I suppose, is that if you retire and you've not seen anything different, and you've been offered the chance to play for a great team like Real Madrid, I thought, I would regret missing the opportunity, I suppose. But playing in, living in different climate, with a different language, different players, that stadium, that kit, that history behind the club and all the rest of it was too much to sort of turn down, I suppose. But yeah, it was very strange. I suppose not having any friends and having to make new friends, and my wife being the same, and not having a house and having to live in a hotel for a few months and things like that. It was quite tricky from a personal point of view. The football side, I felt that I took to it like a duck to water. I mean, I loved it. I was scoring goals. I was matey with a lot of the players. I mean, as I say, the little bits, the nitty gritties things. If we had, let's say, a game on a Saturday and we were training on a Wednesday, and Ronaldo says to me, "Coming for a game of golf after training," very hard to say no when you're trying to make new friends and all the rest of it. But you forget that you've been away Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Monday, Tuesday, let's say in the Champions League in Italy or something. You're then going in a hotel on, Thursday night for Friday for Saturday's game, and you end up never being at home or never being in the hotel room, and your wife is there with a 1-year-old child on her own. And I'm saying, "Oh, I'm off to play golf now for 4 or 5 hours." It wasn't easy, let's say that. And obviously people will always criticise and say, "Oh, what more do you want? You've got a nice hat, or you can get it." But trust me, living in a hotel room for about 5 months, when your wife struggles to drive on the other side of the road, and you've got a 1-year-old child, things like that, it was very hard off the pitch for my wife to settle, and I could appreciate that. But also, I had to try to ingratiate myself and become friends with team members as well. So it was a tricky period. But as I say, on the pitch, it was absolutely great.